Yo, what's up YouTube? We are watching League of Legends Kha Zix history, and this video is part 2. So if you haven't seen part 1 yet, then I heavily suggest go and watch part 1 and then come back to this video and watch part 2. But we're watching part 2 now, and we are in 2014, late 2014. I think we're in pre-season 5, and let's see what happened to Kha Zix in late 2014.
Tons of iconic items started getting removed from the game in 2015, Sword of the Occult, DFG, Sword of the Divine, and Atma's Impaler. The map was updated, the jungle got reworked, Scuttle Crab was added, dragons no longer just gave global gold and some experience, but instead gave unique and interesting buffs. The biggest part that impacted Kha Zix was that the entire jungle itself got changed. Every camp got changed, new things were added, some stuff, most importantly the Spirit Stone items were removed, and even Smite got changed. Right away there was a playstyle and a champion that the new jungle favored a lot, which was of course patch 4.20 Warwick. That patch saw Warwick become one of the strongest champions
old Warwick point and click ult.
The new jungle item called Devourer was clearly perfect for him, and other attack speed farming junglers benefited quite a bit as well. Obviously, Kha Zix was not going to build an on-hit attack speed farming jungler item, it just didn't make any sense. So for the first part of the new season, the jungle meta wasn't favorable for him. After a couple of months, Riot would then rework the tank jungle item called Juggernaut into something new, another infamous jungle item of that season called Cinderhulk. This item single-handedly changed the meta for about 9 months. It defined what made champions good and junglers strong.
Meta.
Sejuani and Gragas building tank were the norm in both solo queue and competitive play for most of that season. Again, this jungle item meta didn't help Kha Zix whatsoever. He wasn't going to build the tank jungle item, so he would have to wait for the next meta. But it turns out the next meta would be for AP junglers. Runeglaive would be introduced to the game in the summer.
I remember Ezreal jungle with Runeglaive was so broken, and he'll go lane. Oh my.
The solo lanes. I've made an entire video about AP Ezreal with Smite and that whole story, but the point is that item would stay meta along with Cinderhulk from the end of 2015 on into 2016. Tank junglers like Zac, Sejuani, and Gragas were good with Cinderhulk, and AP junglers like Nidalee and Elise were also good. For about 12 to 16 months in total, Kha Zix was kept in a somewhat weak state due to the relatively bad state of the other jungle item that he actually used called Warrior. The item was fine and decently cost efficient, but it never defined the jungle meta like the other ones did. Very opposite to 2014 when Kha Zix and the rest of the AD assassins had fantastic items that would keep them relevant and meta defining, in 2016 it was not like that at all. They were mostly just terrible. Earlier that year had seen the removal of the Brutalizer, and it was a heavy crutch for AD assassins. They would rely on this item in order for them to be strong, and they would suffer for the entire year without it. Rather than just reintroducing an item that was a crutch for these champions, Riot decided that the best approach was to rework Kha Zix and the rest of the assassins, which brings us to the Season 7 Assassin class.
I remember this.
They would push the possibilities of the game in ways we had never seen before.
Lethality, right?
Giving Talon infinite mobility, or close to infinite mobility with his parkour.
Lethality being introduced.
Katarina got even more mobility with her daggers. Rengar got a QSS on his W, but Kha Zix got near infinite stealth.
Yes, I remember this. Where you walk into a bush. Oh my god, yes. Oh my, this was when Kha Zix was turbo broken. Oh my god, yes. Oh, I get so happy seeing this.
Saw a brand new R-Evolve mechanic that was meant to actually be viable and better than the previous one. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. This R-Evolve would allow him to gain essentially a free activation of his ultimate while entering a bush. I was able to dig up a video that was released during the PvE stages of that new season, and it showcased just how crazy the R-Evolve was. It was possible to be nearly 100% stealth while moving through the jungle. The first thing to understand is that with mobility boots, you had just barely enough movement speed to make it from one bush to another, only in the absolute longest parts of the path where you're not
this was so broken.
I
had like 70% ban rate.
That's not the entire reason that this was completely and utterly broken. Control wards would not reveal him even if you place them in the bushes. With this assassin update also came the Vision and Ward rework, and it made it so control wards would reveal champions like Evelynn and Rengar who have camouflage, long forms of stealth, but Kha Zix's ultimate is in the invisibility class and is not revealed by them. Now usually that's not a problem, and in today's game it really isn't because he's only stealth for a couple of seconds at most, but in this case it was possible for you to run from your side of the jungle through each of the bushes, resetting the cooldown, and after about 18 seconds of permanent and total invisibility you could end up in the enemy jungle with no counterplay of any type. When Kha Zix would evolve his ultimate first, he would end up being invisible for like half the game, and from your perspective, he kinda just teleports from his side of the jungle to yours and stands right on top of you to kill you. It's
Storm Raiders as well.
This ever existed, and even with this PvE footage showing the possibilities, the thing is that it didn't catch on right away. The hype after his rework was all about the Q changes, and he would instantly become a good jungler once again. The Q evolve, especially with the brand new lethality items to build like Edge of Night, would just be a little too alluring at first, and for a good reason too, because it was quite strong. The very first nerf that he would receive was early on into the season on patch 7.3. This reduced his overall damage output by a lot, hitting not only the
this is like today's Kha Zix Q,
but also the damage. Even with those nerfs, it didn't slow him down one bit. He was being played in competitive play, he was being played all over solo queue, and this bug was fully back in action. The Q Evolve playstyle was dominant for all of the early parts of Season 7, until we get to the summer of that year. On back-to-back patches, Kha Zix received some huge changes. Firstly, on patch 7.13, they nerfed his Q a little bit, but in compensation would buff the R evolve. Then, on the next patch for 7.14, Duskblade would see a full rework where it became the strongest item in the game. This version of the item was the most powerful we had ever seen. It was blatantly and extremely overtuned. It could turn any champion into a one-shotting AD assassin so long as you built the item. With this new item under his belt and a brand new playstyle to evolve your ultimate first, he would end up being even stronger than he was at the beginning of the season, which is something that almost nobody saw coming. After 7.14, he became the best champion in the game, period. This is when he would reach his highest ever win rate and pick rate. Everyone wanted to abuse him for free low and nobody wanted to play against it. What are you going to do versus permanent stealth that you cannot counter with control wards? For pro play specifically, he was the favorite champion among two Korean junglers, Score and Trick. Both of these guys showed just how good the champion could be when you used him at the highest level. The problem with pro play assassins is that they usually require the game to be chaotic and uncoordinated with a lack of vision control, but in this case, the R evolve didn't matter. He exerted an absolute crap ton of pressure, and if he was ever in your side of the jungle, anywhere near your quadrant of the jungle, you had to play safe, because chances are he's sitting right on top of you. He could be there. This level of power is what led to his ridiculous pick rate and ban rate in competitive play. For 2018, the Season 8 Runes Reforged rework would bring a whole change to the system of runes and masteries. It saw Ardent Censer and Enchanters also get nerfed, which would open the door once again for assassins to be strong. Thunderlord's Decree, which was Kha Zix's primary keystone, would become Electrocuted, and this has always been a standard and solid option for him. Right now, Dark Harvest is the rune that stacks up when you damage champions who are below half health, and it makes it great for scaling as well as executing targets. It might be hard to remember the original version of Dark Harvest since the one that we know today where you deal damage to a champion who is below half health and then that will stack up throughout the game and it's good for champions like Karthus was introduced 2 years ago now and hasn't been changed all that much, but for the entire year of 2018, Dark Harvest was pretty different. Back then, Dark Harvest would grant you souls whether you killed large minions, large monsters, or champions, and then
it's like 150 stacks should do insane damage or something.
After you got 150 stacks, you would essentially have a very long time to use this soul charge, giving you 300 seconds to use it, which pretty much is all the time you would ever need. This keystone would provide Kha Zix a way to benefit from both farming and ganking at the same time, and the thing about Kha Zix is that he's always been able to do a little bit of both, as some Kha Zix players prefer to spam gank and force tons of fights and dives, while others prefer to power farm and scale a little bit depending on the jungle matchup. The versatility of the original Dark Harvest meant that it was used interchangeably along with Electrocute as Kha Zix's main keystone. On patch 8.2, he saw his first big changes for the year 2018. They decreased the passive ratio but buffed his bonus AD on his Q, which was a worthwhile trade-off for the farming Kha Zix playstyle, since you can always use your Q to farm your camps, but your passive only applies to champions. That patch would almost be the final nail in the coffin for the R evolve first, since the passive damage would help make up for the lost damage if you don't evolve your Q, but there was one more patch on 8.6 that would be the final blow. The isolation bonus damage was now simply way too strong to pass up, and with them removing the 20% increased damage to monsters on his Void Spike, it meant that you had no choice but to evolve Q first. All of these changes meant that the Q evolve was now mandatory and the R evolution was left in a very weird spot, and it didn't make a lot of sense. He didn't have the capacity to use it due to the damage loss, which is why on patch 8.11 he would be partially reverted from his rework about a year and a half prior. Reverting the ultimate would make Kha Zix easier to balance, but failed to make the R evolution once again worth it either. It would revert back to being a somewhat niche and interesting option for him, but probably not something that you want to use every game and doesn't always make a lot of sense. For all of 2018 in professional play, as previously mentioned, he was still fantastic. He would pick up right where he left off from dominating Season 7 and had no problem transitioning into Season 8 due to these couple of changes as well as Dark Harvest.
Fnatic should know that this is happening. They get a blue trinket down.
Are gonna steal this one? Oh my, he's gonna steal it, isn't he? Oh my god, with the flash. Oh my.
He gets deleted, but that is exactly what Fnatic wanted. Gonna allow Jack Troll to body block.
Oh, he's gonna steal the Elder as well.
Dropping Broxa, hero moment. This is your chance. 3K getting ever lower. Who's actually gonna take
it?
Ooh,
873 smite.
Takes it back, gives his life, but saves the day.
Back-to-back steal.
Heading into the Season 8 World Championship,
Kha
break
Zix.
new grounds in the skins department just
25
as he
chromas.
did with his release. Championship Kha Zix is one of my favorite skins in the game, period, and during the entire event, it was possible to earn and pay for a bunch of chromas for this skin as well. In total, he would have 24 chromas for this skin, one to represent each team that attended the World Championship. That was already the most chromas for any skin ever, but later on he also got a golden chroma with the rest of the championship skins, making him now have 25 chromas for one skin. One of the best games of Kha Zix that year is one that I remember actually watching live, which was Santorin during the NALCS summer.
I don't think it was
back
this,
when he was
but
playing for
then again, who watches
He played
LCS?
against CLG and Reignover, and he locked in his Kha Zix and finished with a score of 10-3-6. He was all over the map, starting 5-1. After just getting this awesome new championship skin with all of these chromas, you would think that the next season would be even better, and he could continue that momentum from the previous two seasons. And while he was not a bad champion by any means, he would slow down a little bit, and one reason could have been because of one patch. About halfway through the year in 2019, something weird happened with Kha Zix. Let's talk about the time that he had a little bit of a bug problem. On patch 9.13, Riot
yes, I remember this.
Just like they
oh, it was so annoying.
And sometimes they don't always tell us about
Game is actually still bugged, not with ISO, but with his R auto.
And for whatever reason, something in Kha Zix's gameplay got messed up. Things that normally would not cause him to lose isolation on the target, for example, a Caitlyn trap or a Karthus wall, all of a sudden were making the enemies not be seen as isolated. And considering how much damage he really loses when a target isn't isolated, this was a game changer. This would actually be a big nerf. The Kha Zix Mains Reddit worked really hard on compiling a comprehensive list of all of the things that were causing these problems, and thankfully within just the next patch cycle, Riot got it sorted out and everything was fixed, except for apparently Yuumi. Now, nobody is really sure.
They said that this is intentional. How can it be intentional that I lose isolation damage and I can't even deal damage to Yuumi? Oh my god. And I was like, oh, it's bugged. And then eventually Riot said, no, it's not a bug. This is intentional. And then now if you play against enemy Yuumi and you evolve Q, like you're just useless. You have to ban the champion.
Yuumi is supposed to block a champion from being isolated when she's attached. Nobody's sure whether it's supposed to count or not, but as of right now, she does indeed make them not isolated. Another reason why he wouldn't have the same level of power in competitive play for 2019 is that 2019 saw the resurgence of tanks. AD carries, AD assassins, and AD bruisers would slowly dip during that season, and we would see a rise of tank champions using Grasp of the Undying, using Aftershock, and building extremely tanky items. He would be given some of his base damage back that he lost in previous changes and nerfs with a nice buff on patch 9.15. With the help of these buffs, something awesome happened in the world of Kha Zix. Metaphor is a North American multi-season challenger level jungler who is also a streamer, content creator, and these days he actually makes videos about Warzone, which is really cool. Anyway, for several seasons, he was one of the best junglers in North America, being known for champions like Evelynn and, of course, also Kha Zix. And in 2019, he would hit rank 1 playing mostly Kha Zix. Even though this was not his absolute peak power and was better in previous seasons, good Kha Zix players can always make him work for solo queue, him thriving in the chaos and players not.
Now, yes, Agon also hit rank 1, but I hope they mention it, and if not, then I will mention it. Costanza, or Chaos Angel, also hit rank 1 in Season 11 with Kha Zix. And he actually also did, so Metaphor did a 48 wins, 0 losses with Kha Zix. And I can't remember what rank it was. I think maybe he hit Diamond, or he hit... I think it was between Diamond and Masters, without losing on Kha Zix. Now, I don't remember if he was losing on other champions. I can't remember the exact numbers. But Costanza went from unranked to Masters on EU West with, I believe it was 52 wins and 0 losses. And that is more impressive than Metaphor. And I hope they mention it here, but if not, then shout out to Costanza or Chaos Angel.
Not warding against him, not knowing how to play against his isolation damage gives him tons of solo carry potential. But in terms of significant events for Kha Zix, especially at the pro level, he really wouldn't do much for the rest of 2019 and even in 2020. In solo queue, he picked up a little bit of traction because of a build optimization. Typically, Kha Zix builds like a full assassin, using runes like Dark Harvest or Electrocute, building
and how are they gonna mention Conqueror Board Drinker?
All that kind of stuff. But in 2020, a Conqueror Kha Zix build with a slightly tankier Bruiser setup was kind of the meta for a while. Using items like Red Smite and Black Cleaver would allow him to stay in the fight, use his Evolved W for 90% slows more often, and he also had much more survivability. He also received a fantastic buff on patch 10.14, where Taste Their Fear would have the isolation bonus damage increased from 100% all the way to 120%.
Yep, and this was nice, but it's now
During
nerfed.
the previous World Championship, sadly, Kha Zix was only picked one time, and it happened in the worst way possible. Deep into the tournament.
Oh, Selfmade. Oh no, I remember Selfmade picked it here, and they lost. Oh no.
Fnatic would explode out of the gate in this series and would jump to a 2-0 lead in the quarterfinals. Being just a single victory away from a Final Four appearance, Fnatic's Selfmade wanted to go for an aggressive jungle pick. He had just stomped the previous game,
and then they ended up losing, getting reverse swept by Top Esports.
Surely, with how well they played as a team in the previous two games, Fnatic would just clean sweep Top Esports in one of League's most improbable upsets ever. But
you
for
got
game
counter-picked by Lisa.
Selfmade picked Kha Zix, and well, it did not do very well. Finishing with a score of 2-6-4, Selfmade had a rough game to say the least. All of Fnatic's momentum had been squashed, and even though they started off 2-0 and were still up 2-1 in this series, something about just how terrible that Game 3 went made a reverse sweep seem like it was all but guaranteed.
Made a Fnatic their way. Look at the cheeky.
They see him, they blue chip get it over the wall.
They absolutely do. He's not going to be able to get in range.
Oh, he flashed over. Pain. Just pain. I remember he was trying to get the soul, and then they lose, and then they got reverse swept, and they lost. Oh. Every EU player remembers this.
Knight stays alive long enough as Hylissang runs away. Nemesis is down. The shockwave kills Bwippo, and Reckless can all but watch his Nexus die. Top Esports bounce back in Game 3.
One thing I'll say about this, because not everyone knows, when they got back to Europe, so when Fnatic got back, Selfmade was streaming, and I was still streaming for Fnatic at the time. Well, I can't remember who asked, but someone in chat asked about Kha Zix, or why he picked it, and he said that the other junglers were banned, and then he asked his team if he could go Kha Zix, and they all agreed. And then he like realized that yeah, the champion just didn't fit back then. And then he elaborated because I asked like some more questions after because we were on the topic, and he basically just explained that everyone agreed on that Kha Zix was like a decent pick, so he didn't just like YOLO pick Kha Zix, and it was because the other junglers were banned. So just throwing that out there.
Season 11 reworked the entire item system, and just as with all other champions in the game, Kha Zix would be heavily affected. At the very beginning of this preseason, AD lethality items were completely broken. Eclipse and Collector were not only being abused by Jhin and Misfortune, but of course could be abused by champions like Kha Zix. The interesting thing specifically for Kha Zix is that now that Eclipse was nerfed, it's opened up a couple of different options for him in terms of mythic choices. If you like the Conqueror and Bruiser type build, you can actually take Gore Drinker now and act as a pseudo-Kayn or Aatrox. For the normal Assassin Kha Zix setup, Eclipse, Duskblade, and Prowler's Claw are all viable, and if you ask each individual Kha Zix main what they prefer and what they build, they'll tell you something different. Recently, the Serpent's Fang has been buffed as well, which will help prevent Enchanter metas from constantly crowding out Assassins completely, just as it did with Ardent Censer. So far, most of the changes in Season 11 have been beneficial for AD Assassins as well as Kha Zix. He's one of the better champions in the jungle right now, and especially with other overpowered junglers such as Hecarim, Udyr, and Olaf getting nerfed a bunch, it's going to rocket Kha Zix right to the top of the priority list. Kha Zix has one of the most interesting stories in all of League of Legends, and I'm really glad we got to cover it today. It's incredibly cool to see the progression of this game and the standards that Riot used to have for champion design. The fact that on his release in 2012, he was considered revolutionary and set a new bar for champion design by having a whopping 40 animations is pretty funny if you compare it to today's standards with champions like Aphelios, who has hundreds. His champion model and complexity holds up pretty well with today's standards, even though it's almost been 9 full years. Finally, despite around 25 to 30 total changes throughout the years, his abilities are mostly the same as they were on his release, albeit just a lot of minor tweaks. They hit the nail on the head with the theme of an assassin on this character. His isolation and his evolution fantasy is personally my favorite in the assassin class. Is he all that fun to play against? Well, no, not really. Is he kinda broken? Yeah, he is. But I think it's hard to say that he is at least incredibly cool and unique. If you enjoyed today's Kha Zix complete champion history, I would really appreciate it if you would leave a like and comment down below. These videos take a long time to make, so anything you can do to help me out with the algorithm and also checking out my Patreon would mean a lot to me. I appreciate regardless that you made it to the end of the video, and like I said, on my Patreon...
So that's basically the end of the video. Huge shout out to Exile. I'll just do this so you guys can see that I like the video. So huge shout out to him. I will leave the video in the description down below. And yeah, that's basically the history of Kha Zix, which is the champion that I started maining back in Season 6 when it wasn't that good, but then in Season 7 and Season 8 it was really good. And now this day in 8 in Season 12, Kha Zix is good in low elo, but in high elo he is not that good, but he gets a new skin soon, possibly gets a buff coming with the skin in 2 months time from the day of the release of today's video. So yeah, hopefully a brighter future for Kha Zix coming soon, and hopefully he will stay strong after that buff that hopefully comes throughout Season 12. But if you enjoyed the video, remember to leave a like. If you have a nostalgic feeling about any of the things that we saw here, leave it in the comment section down below and share it with me. And then, yeah, if you want to see more, then subscribe to my channel. And then thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video or in my next live stream on Twitch. So thank you for watching, and see you guys.